Jake, Sarah, Dr. Harlan and I planned to end this. Caleb's confession pointed us to an abandoned barn on the edge of town, the Reaper's supposed hideout. We went at midnight, the air thick with fog, the barn's weathered boards creaking in the wind. Inside, a dozen masked figures gathered around a makeshift altar, chanting. Lila stood among them, camera in hand, filming. My heart sank. Was she one of them? "Derek!" I shouted, stepping forward. The tall figure turned, his mask slipping to reveal a scarred face. Derek, the ex-student. "This ends now," I said, holding up my phone, recording. He laughed, bitter. "You think you're safe? Your dad, he was one of us back in '86. He burned our barn, ended our legacy. This is payback." My dad? The revelation hit hard, but I pushed it aside. Lila stepped forward, voice shaking. "I was filming them for an expose, Em. It was a prank, but Derek brought real blades." Caleb, the hesitant one, shoved Derek, yelling, "This wasn't the plan!" Chaos erupted. Jake tackled Derek, and Sarah called the police. Caleb helped us restrain the others, unmasking them, mostly students caught up in Derek's scheme for a viral scare. The police arrived, arresting Derek and his core group. Lila's footage went online, exposing the stunt, but the comments flooded with conspiracy theories about the Reaper's return. Back at Oak Ridge, I felt relief, but also dread. Dad's past, Derek's grudge, it all lingered. That night, as I locked our door, a shadow moved outside the window, too quick to catch. Was it over, or had I just stirred a deeper darkness? The note kept me up all night, its threat looping in my head. By morning, Jake arrived in Elmwood, his pickup truck rattling into the dorm lot. He hugged me tightly, his flannel shirt smelling of home. "You're not staying here alone," he said, eyes scanning the quad like he expected trouble. I showed him the note and the ID tag, explaining everything. Sarah, still shaken from the chase, agreed to help, though she looked pale. We went to Dr. Harlan's office, hoping for answers. His desk was cluttered with books on local folklore, and he listened intently as I recounted the masked figures and Lila's disappearance. "Sounds like the Reaper's legacy," he said grimly. "I looked into them years ago. Students got swept up in their rituals, thought it was a thrill. But someone's taking it too far." He hesitated, then added, "Lila was asking me about a campus scandal last week, something about misused funds. Maybe she got too close." My stomach twisted. Lila, digging into secrets? I remembered Caleb Morrow's ID tag and tracked him down, a quiet sophomore in my bio class. Confronting him in the cafeteria, I held up the tag. His face paled. "He didn't mean for it to go this far," he stammered. "It's just a stunt, for a video. But Derek, he's the leader. He's got a grudge against the school. Got expelled last year." Derek. The name hit like a brick. A disgruntled ex-student? That night, Jake insisted on patrolling the quad with me. We spotted the group near the woods, masks glinting. They moved fast, circling us on bikes, waving replica scythes. Jake shouted, shoving one off their bike, and they scattered. But as we caught our breath, I saw her, Lila's silhouette among them, standing still, maskless. Was she trapped, or was she part of this?
It was the middle of October last year, right in the heart of Elmwood, Illinois, where Lakeside State University throws its annual Harvest Fest. If you've never heard of it, think of it as our campus's way of celebrating fall, a mix of pumpkin patches, hay bale mazes, and bonfires crackling under the stars. The whole thing takes over the old cornfields just beyond the main quad, near that creepy abandoned silo everyone whispers about. There's live bluegrass music, cider stands, and even a tractor pull for the locals who show up. It's the one weekend where the town and the school blend together, and as a junior majoring in environmental science, I always looked forward to it. The air smells like wood smoke and caramel apples, and for a few hours you forget about midterms piling up. I grew up in a tiny farm town about 2 hours west, so events like this felt familiar, almost comforting. My name's Emily, and back home, harvest time meant family gatherings and bonfires that lasted till dawn. But at Lakeside, it was different, bigger, wilder, with crowds of students laughing and linking arms. That night, I went with my roommate Sarah and our friend Leela. Sarah's the outgoing type, always dragging us into the fun, while Leela is more quiet, the one who snaps photos of everything for her journalism portfolio. We started early, around dusk, wandering through the maze of hay bales. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in oranges and purples, and strings of fairy lights flickered on overhead. "Emily, come on, let's grab some cider before the line gets insane," Sarah called, her ponytail bouncing as she tugged my sleeve. Leela trailed behind, fiddling with her camera, capturing shots of kids carving pumpkins. We sipped our drinks by the main bonfire, the heat warming our faces as the band played folksy tunes. People were everywhere. Freshmen in hoodies, professors mingling with locals, even some townies from Elmwood proper. That's when I first heard the murmurs about the old legends. You know how small towns have their stories? Elmwood's got one about the harvest ghosts, these figures in ragged masks who supposedly roamed the fields back in the 1800s, scaring off trespassers during crop season. It's just folklore, something to tell around campfires, but Sarah loved bringing it up to freak us out. "Oh, please," Leela scoffed, rolling her eyes. "It's probably just farmers in overalls chasing kids out of their corn. No ghosts here." We laughed it off, but as the night wore on, the crowd thinned a bit. The music wrapped up around midnight, and folks started heading back to dorms or off-campus houses. Leela wanted to stick around for some night shots of the silo. She said the moonlight made it look eerie, perfect for her project. Sarah and I waved her off, promising to text later. "Don't get lost in there," I joked, but she just grinned and disappeared into the shadows of the field. Sarah and I made our way toward Oak Ridge Hall, our dorm on the edge of campus, where the woods creep up close. The path was lit by sporadic street lamps, crunching leaves under our feet. It was peaceful at first, the kind of quiet that follows a big event. But then I noticed them, shapes moving along the tree line. At first, I thought it was just stragglers from the fest, maybe some guys in costumes lingering for laughs. Halloween was close enough that masks weren't unusual, but these weren't fun outfits. They wore dark hoods and crude masks like burlap sacks with jagged eye holes, standing still as statues. "Did you see that?" I whispered to Sarah, nudging her arm.
She squinted into the darkness. "Probably just pranksters. Harvest Fest brings out the weirdos. Come on, let's hurry." We picked up our pace, but the figures didn't move. Or at least, I thought they didn't. As we crossed the quad, a chill ran down my spine, like eyes boring into my back. Oak Ridge loomed ahead, its brick facade glowing under the moon. We swiped our cards at the door, the beep echoing in the empty lobby. Sarah headed straight for the elevator, yawning. "Night, Em. See you in the morning." I nodded, but something held me back. The lobby felt off, too silent, too still. I glanced toward the common lounge where a couple of vending machines hummed softly. That's when I saw him. A guy, or at least I assumed it was a guy, slouched in one of the armchairs. He wore the same kind of mask, rough fabric, black slits for eyes. No phone in hand, no backpack, just sitting there, staring straight ahead. My stomach twisted. It wasn't right. Who wears a mask inside at 1 a.m.? I froze for a second, my keys jingling in my grip. He didn't acknowledge me, but I swear his head tilted slightly, like he was listening. Heart racing, I backed toward the stairs, not wanting to turn away. The door to the stairwell creaked as I pushed it open, and I took the steps 2 at a time up to our floor. Our room was at the end of the hall, past rows of closed doors. I fumbled with the lock, finally slipping inside and bolting it shut. Sarah was already in her bunk scrolling her phone. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh, peeling off my jacket. "Yeah, just, tired. That festival wore me out." But as I climbed into bed, the unease lingered. I pulled the curtains tight, peering out the window at the woods below. The trees swayed gently, but then, movement. A figure on a bike circling the parking lot, mask glinting in the lamplight. And another joining from the shadows. They weren't leaving, they were watching. I grabbed my phone, fingers hovering over Lila's number. No new texts. Where was she? The scratching started then, faint, like nails on wood, right outside our door. Sarah stirred in her sleep, oblivious. I held my breath, waiting for it to stop. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The scratching outside our door stopped as suddenly as it started, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. I lay frozen in my bunk, clutching my phone, the screen's glow casting shadows across our cramped dorm room at Oak Ridge Hall. Sarah's soft snores filled the air, oblivious to the dread gnawing in my stomach. I wanted to wake her, to tell her about the masked figure in the lounge and the bikers circling outside, but her dismissal earlier, calling it a prank, made me hesitate. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just Harvest Fest antics, like she said. But my gut screamed otherwise, a lesson I'd learned growing up in a small farm town where trusting your instincts could mean the difference between safety and trouble. Back home in Willow Creek, 2 hours west of Elmwood, Illinois, my older brother Jake always warned me about the quiet dangers of rural places. "Towns like ours, Em, they're safe till they aren't," he'd say, recounting stories of vandals or drifters who'd spooked our neighbors. His voice echoed in my head now, urging caution. I checked my phone again. No reply from Lila. She'd promised to text after her photo shoot at the silo, but her last message, sent at 11:47 p.m., just said, "This place is creepy as hell." That was over an hour ago. I slid out of bed, careful not to creak the frame, and crept to the window. The parking lot below was empty now, the bikers gone, but the woods beyond seemed to pulse with secrets. I tried calling Lila, but it went straight to voicemail. My fingers hovered over Jake's number, but it was 1:30 a.m., and I didn't want to sound paranoid. Instead, I pulled on my hoodie and grabbed my keychain, where a small canister of pepper spray dangled, a gift from Jake when I left for Lakeside State University. The hallway was dim, the fluorescent lights flickering like they were on their last breath. I needed air, needed to clear my head, so I headed for the study lounge on the second floor. It was usually empty this late, a good spot to think. But as I reached the lounge, my heart stopped. Another masked figure stood by the vending machines, motionless, their burlap mask catching the faint glow of a soda display. This one was taller, leaner than the guy downstairs, with a bike propped against the wall. My breath hitched, and I backed away, but my sneakers squeaked on the tile.
The figure's head snapped toward me. No words, just a slow tilt, like a predator sizing up prey. I turned and bolted down the hall, my pulse hammering in my ears. The stairwell door slammed behind me as I stumbled into the ground floor lobby, nearly tripping over a stray backpack. I ducked into a bathroom, locking the door and pressing my back against it. My hands shook as I gripped the pepper spray, listening for footsteps. Nothing. Just the drip of a leaky faucet. 5 minutes passed, maybe 10. I cracked the door open, peering into the empty hall. The lounge was dark now, no sign of the figure or their bike. I stepped out, heart still racing, and made it back to my room without incident. Sarah was still asleep, her phone buzzing with notifications. I locked the door and sank onto my bed, trying to convince myself it was nothing, just kids pulling a stunt. But then my phone lit up, an unknown number. I answered, holding my breath. "Emily," a voice whispered, low and raspy, like wind through dead leaves. "You shouldn't be out so late." The line went dead. I stared at the scream, my blood running cold. They knew my name. How did they know my name?
Morning light filtered through our dorm window, but it did little to shake the chill from last night. Sarah was already up, brewing coffee in our tiny Keurig, humming a tune from the festival. I told her everything. The masked guy in the lounge, the bikers, the phone call. Her eyes widened, but she waved it off. It's probably just some frat idiots messing around. Harvest Fest makes everyone act weird. Lila's fine too. She probably crashed at a friend's place." I wasn't so sure. Lila's phone was off, and her social media hadn't updated since her silo photos. I needed answers, so after breakfast, I headed to the campus library, a brick building nestled between oaks that always smelled like old paper and dust. I wanted to dig into Elmwood's history, those harvest ghost stories Sarah mentioned. Maybe they'd explain the masks. The library was quiet, save for a few students cramming for midterms. I found a corner computer and started searching local archives. Most of it was fluff, articles about the festival, town fairs, corn yields. But then I stumbled on a 1980s newspaper clipping about a cult that used to gather in Elmwood's woods during harvest season. They called themselves the Reapers, wore crude masks, and performed rituals to protect the land. The article said they disbanded after a fire burned down their meeting barn, but rumors persisted of copycats over the years. "Looking into local ghost stories?" a voice said behind me. I jumped, spinning to see Dr. Harlan, my environmental science professor. He was in his 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a habit of knowing more than he let on. I explained what I'd found, leaving out the masked figures for now. He nodded, leaning against a bookshelf. The Reapers were an odd bunch, obsessed with old harvest rites. Some say they never really left, just went underground. Small towns hold on to their ghosts. I shivered, thinking of the burlap masks. Back at the dorm, Sarah rushed in, holding Lila's phone. "She found it in the quad," she said, voice shaky. "It was under a bench, screen cracked. We powered it on, finding a string of texts to an unknown number. 'Stop following me. This isn't funny.' The last one, sent at 12:15 a.m., just said, 'Help.' My stomach dropped. We reported it to campus security, but they seemed more annoyed than concerned, chalking it up to a lost phone. That night, I noticed strange markings on dorm doors, chalked symbols like crossed scythes. I couldn't sleep, so I slipped out to the woods near the silo, desperate for clues. That's when I saw them, 3 masked figures in the trees, chanting softly. I crept closer, heart pounding, but a twig snapped underfoot. They turned, and I ran, their footsteps crashing behind me. I ducked behind a tree, gasping, and spotted something on the ground, a dropped mask with a university ID tag clipped to it. I grabbed it and sprinted back to Oak Ridge, locking myself in. Jake called just then. His voice was tense. "Em, I'm driving up tomorrow. Something's not right." As we spoke, I heard it. Bikes circling outside, closer than ever, their tires crunching gravel like a warning.
The next evening, I convinced Sarah to come with me to the cornfields near the silo. Lila was still missing, and that ID tag, a name I didn't recognize, Caleb Morrow, kept nagging at me. Campus security hadn't done much, so we took matters into our own hands. The fields were eerie at dusk, corn stalks rustling like whispers, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. Sarah clutched a flashlight, her usual bravado fading. "This is crazy, Em. What if they're out here?" "Then we find Lila," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We moved deeper, the silo's silhouette looming like a sentinel. That's when we heard it, low chanting, rhythmic, coming from a clearing. We crouched behind a hay bale, peering out. 5 masked figures stood in a circle, their burlap faces lit by a small fire. They held what looked like old farm tools, scythes, pitchforks, but they gleamed too cleanly, like replicas. One figure, taller than the rest, waved a blade in the air, reciting something about honoring the harvest. Sarah grabbed my arm. "That's insane! Let's go!" But I couldn't move. Lila could be there. Then the chanting stopped, and the tall figure's head turned our way. "Run!" I hissed. We bolted through the corn, stalks slapping our faces, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. Footsteps thundered behind us, shouts echoing. I glanced back. 3 figures were gaining, their masks grotesque in the dim light. Sarah tripped, and I pulled her up, but we got separated in the maze of stalks. I stumbled into an old barn, its doors half rotted, and hid behind a stack of crates. The pursuers stopped outside, their voices low. "She's close," one said, their tone cold. But another voice, softer, muttered, "This is getting out of hand." My heart raced. Was one of them doubting this? The group moved off, and I waited, breath shallow, until silence returned. Inside the barn, I found paper scattered on a table, notes about a harvest revival, mentions of a viral stunt to scare the campus for likes. My blood boiled. Was this a game? I crept back to Oak Ridge alone, finding a note slipped under our door. "Stop looking, Emily. You're next." My hands shook as I locked the door, the words burning into my mind.